Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to a special edition of Popcorn and Compliance. As you know from prior episodes, Megan Dougherty, co-founder of One Stone Creative, and I are huge MCU fans. So we've decided to do the MCU movie oeuvre. That's right. We're going to do all of the MCU movies in this special podcast series. Over this series, we will take a look at the storylines, some of the cookies and other cool things. We'll describe the great action scenes from each episode, and then we'll take a look at issues raised by each episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will take things from the societal angle, from the social justice angle, from the MCU angle, and perhaps even from the compliance angle. But if you're an MCU fan or you're a compliance fan, I know you will enjoy. In this episode, we take up Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Popcorn and Compliance, the MCU series, is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back again with Megan Dougherty with our continuing challenge of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Why? But, well, because it's there and we're Marvel Cinematic Universe uber geek fans. We're reviewing each film as they appear in chronological order, not by release date. And so that means today we are up to Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm your co-host, Tom Fox.
And I'm Megan Dougherty, co-founder of One Stone Creative. And I'm really excited to talk about these movies because I think, Tom, you had a similar experience. They're really great on a second watching.
They really were, and I think the enjoyment was even more because it was 1 and 2 back to back, as opposed to separated over a couple of other films like we had with Iron Man and perhaps some others. But we are introduced to Peter Quill. We are introduced to his life of being an orphan from Earth, allegedly kidnapped after his mother dies. And his father has gone away, so that he has been a scavenger all of his life and basically raised by pirates. So with that background, you might think he's a somewhat dodgy character, but he does have some redeeming values, of course. But he likes to steal things. And a large part of this movie is him stealing things. So that's sort of his background. Then in the midst of him trying to steal things, he gets hooked up with the other members who become the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're all in a jail or prison or trying to steal something, and they run, bump, or otherwise meet each other. And that was kind of interesting as well. And then, of course, they coalesce into not necessarily a fighting force, at least not in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but a comedic force going across the galaxy, purloining things, meeting interesting people, and generally taking the mick out of bad guys. So I'm not quite sure.
They do save the galaxy a little.
They do save the galaxy a little. So what are some of your top plot points, Megan?
Well, the time they spent on introducing all the different members of, the ensemble cast. So you've got main character Peter Quill, also Gamora, daughter of Thanos, Rocket, the genetically modified raccoon, Groot, the sentient and violent plant, Drax, the vengeful straight man, I call him, and just really developing the characters as individuals and then seeing them coalesce, I think was one of the overriding things of the movie and what made it so enjoyable. And kind of the as you say, they all start off with fairly nefarious intentions, but find a reason to work together and work to help others by the end of the movie. At the same time, kind of creating a chosen family for themselves, which as queer hits pretty hard in terms of the feelings. It's always really nice to see that in film. The fact that it's even extended further into the universe is really, really cool. So those were some of my favorites. What came up most for you?
Actually, it was really not one of those, and I wouldn't say it really should rise to the top, but I was intrigued by a couple of my favorite actors really playing against character here. Glenn Close plays female president, CEO, chief executive of a planet. And one of my very favorite characters is character actors is John C. Reilly. And he plays, I think you would call him some sort of police official or law enforcement official. And he's very straight. And, you know, his face, his demeanor, the way he conducts himself, the way he acts is very droll and can be very droll. And he plays that to the hilt. And so I really enjoyed those two roles. Once again, the special effects were just outstanding. And I've read somewhere that there were almost 2,500 separate special effects for this movie. And it was very heavily specially effectively made and produced. So that was cool. I really, it's interesting how they kind of came together as a family, and that certainly was by the end of the movie. I guess the thing about that I enjoyed was that sort of middle part where they came to, if not a truce, a rapprochement, where they wouldn't kill each other, and they were going to at least work together for a common goal. We got to see an Infinity Stone in action, which is always cool to see an Infinity Stone. Ronan the Destroyer, one of the great bad guys. He's hammering away with that massive hammer of his. Where actually I thought about that character almost in the first Christopher Fine Captain Kirk Star Trek movie in the Kelvin timeline, where the Romulan bad guys are just obsessed with destroying the Federation, because the Federation down in the future destroyed their home world. And we see the same sort of obsession with Ronan, almost a religious fanatic, but certainly a fanatic. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a rollicking good story, rollicking good fun. There are lots of comedic elements in the MCU films, but this one seemed to have more of them. And for some reason, I didn't enjoy it as much the first time around, but the second time I did. And by the time we get to Guardians 2, I think I'll probably enjoy them even more. But
I had a really similar experience, like watching it, a second time. Maybe now it's the familiarity with, the whole MCU is deeper now, but I found it hysterical. I was cackling during these movies.
What are some of the cookies you enjoyed in this, Megan?
One of those kind of the very first act of the movie, I guess after they're all sent to prison and they really set everything up. This is going to be a heist and a prison break film, and that's going to be a lot of fun. That's kind of going to set the tone for everything that's going on. But then they totally subverted it into kind of more of an epic hero's journey and quest movie, which I thought was really nice. One thing I thought was really interesting and a little bit funny, and I don't quite have an answer for, is how Earth is well known in the universe, and Terrans, are a known quantity, but most humans on Earth have no idea that that's the case, and I'm kind of wondering how and why that happened. So I thought that was interesting. And then one really little tiny one in the Collector's Emporium. I think I saw it. Was it Cosmo or Laika the space dog? Yeah. So I thought that was great, and of course the wow, I'm blanking on Stan Lee, the creator of the whole universe. His cameo was pretty great in the initial opening sequence.
I have to give a huge shout out to Howard the Duck. Since this happened before you were born, I'm sure you don't remember it.
Oh yes,
but Howard the Duck, I came out. It was one of the first movies done by George Lucas after Star Wars. And it was at that, I think it was maybe 78, 79. It was definitely in the 70s because I was in college. And it was panned as perhaps the worst movie ever. Beyond panned. Because George Lucas did it and he had basically an unlimited budget. It was his first movie after Star Wars, yes.
Worse than Plan 9 from Outer Space?
It was a bad script. It was a bad movie. It was a bad story. I mean, now you can watch it generally like you would Plan 9 from Outer Space, just for the value of seeing the worst of the worst. But it wasn't funny, and yes, I did go see it. And what do I remember? Well, I remember he was reading a Play Duck magazine. So, boys never grow up. But anyway, he makes an appearance in the end scene credits, and obviously a character from a very different universe. But huge shout out to Howard the Duck. The second one I want to bring up is the collector's always fascinating because you always get shots of different people, things, items in his collection. And there was actually a dark elf from one of your favorites, Thor 2, and also a Chitauri, which was the army that attacked Earth in the Avengers movie. So I thought that was interesting, and getting to meet the collector, of course, is great fun as well. And then having the Infinity Stone in there, so that really there were some great cookies. I really want to. I really had not thought about the family part of it, but I think you're really onto something, Megan. And that certainly by the end of the movie, it's almost as if, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy and we're off, to save the world. I don't know if it's a 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, but it certainly was very awe-inspiring at the end.
We'll be right back with more on Guardians of the Galaxy 1 after this message from our sponsor.
But I think it was maybe one of the brilliant parts of this movie. It was that it was awe-inspiring in this practical, goofy way. Their rallying cry isn't, let's go save the world for the good of humanity. It's let's just act for once like we have something to give about. And that's what really got everyone on board. And I thought that was charming because the characters are so... they're all diverse and they're different, but they really have this underpinning of no one's ever helped them before, and they've never really helped other people before either. And that kind of makes me, did you have a favorite character from among the ensemble, and if so, who?
I guess the other thing is it's really, I think, the first movie with not a formal introduction, but more of an introduction to Thanos. And we see he as stepfather to Gamora and Nebula. We see how he abused them, how he raised them, why Nebula in particular is so messed up. Gamora too.
I had written down is Thanos is just like, go off, favorite daughter, and do the chore. It's just like, Nebula's right there. They're both standing in front of you.
Right. It's like, yeah, I get it. My sister's the baby. She's the favorite. So yeah, that was actually seeing it this time was a lot more poignant for me on that score as well. There's one other thing though that we both loved about this movie that we have not seen really in any other MCU movie, nor do we see, if we can presage what's coming down the road in some of the later episodes, and that's the soundtrack. And, it starts immediately in the first scene and it goes on throughout. So I'm not quite sure what I've tried to think of the term to call this music, and about the best I've been able to come up with is feel-good music. But in the 70s, when one of these songs came on, even if you had just been dumped by the love of your life, it did put a smile on your face. That's how powerful some of these songs were. So I wanted to maybe ask you, Megan, did you have 2 or 3 favorites, either because of what it meant in the movie or or something that really meant something to you that you could maybe share with us about what it brought up for you.
Definitely. Well, I thought my very, very favorite was Hooked on a Feeling right at the opening. When you've got Peter Quill walking through Morag, kicking horrible little rat creatures out of his way, and getting into a fight. And it's just because it looks so dark and so intense and maybe so on brand for Marvel. This is going to be intense. This is going to be serious. We've just left a deathbed. This is now the character grown up. And then all of a sudden, Hooked on a Feeling starts playing and he's dance fighting. And that is when you kind of know, okay, this is the movie that you're here to see. It's going to be irreverent and subversive. And I thought that was absolutely delightful. And the other one that I really liked was during kind of one of their superhero form-up moment when they are going to go and save the galaxy. And I did have to look up the name because I can't remember music names ever, but it was the Joan Jett song, The Runaways, Cherry Bomb. Cherry Bomb. And so they're all doing, it's their hero moment. They're strapping in, they're locking and loading. But they're all still kind of ridiculous. Gamora's yawning and Peter Quill's sniffling and extra weapons are being tucked in scary places. It was just, I thought it was hilarious and a great take on the trope of the form-up moment.
So those were excellent. There were one of mine was Cherry Bomb, so I'll move to another one, and that was really more because of the songs, because these came out when I was in college, so most of them have some resonation for me. And the first is "Go All the Way" by the Raspberries, because it has one of the greatest opening guitar riffs of any rock and roll song. And then they have a bridge, and it becomes a little more pop. And then the second one was really two, because they deal with love. And the first is "Fooled Around and Fell in Love" by Elvin Bishop. And the second is "I'm Not in Love" by 10cc. And they're basically stories of boys who, as in Elvin Bishop's song, fooled around and then fell in love. And in "I'm Not in Love" is a boy who fools around and doesn't fall in love, much to the girl's consternation. So both of those obviously resonated with me, but the soundtrack is just fabulous. He plays this, and this is part of the running gag throughout the movie. He plays this on a Sony Walkman. So he's got a cassette player with him. And when they go to prison, he has to go back after they break out to get his Walkman. And that's a big part of it. And, it's never really fully explained how 2 centuries later, he's still carrying around either a Sony Walkman or the AA batteries to power it.
I thought it was such a lovely representation, because it was the gift from his mother, and it was kind of his humanity, his sense of connection to others, and he starts to share it with more and more of the team members, and they start getting into it too, and they let us get into it, and sort of like you. I mean, I didn't grow up with these songs. But my dad did. He was a musician in the 70s, so I also grew up listening to these songs. This was like the background track to my childhood, too. It was really, really cool.
Well, I think we both really enjoyed this movie, certainly this viewing, and I had forgotten that there's a Guardians 3 coming out, so but in 2023.
That's awesome.
So that's going to be interesting. But that kind of takes us to the end of our time. And I hope our listeners will join us when we come back next time, because we're going to take up the follow-up episode, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Megan, I greatly look forward to it.
Me too. Talk to you then.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of Popcorn and Compliance, the MCU series. Hope you will join Megan and I again for our next episode, where we take up Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Also, I'd like to tell you about a special podcast series that recently premiered on the Compliance Podcast Network, Trial of the Century, the Enron Trial, where with business journalist Lauren Steffi, who covered the Enron trial, we take a look at the trial of Enron as opposed to the bankruptcy. I know you'll enjoy it if you like fraud, if you like trials, or you just like a good story. Check it out on the Compliance Podcast Network.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.